Hey, everybody, Kevin here with Pursuing Pixels, and welcome back to another edition of Save It for the Cast. And as always, we're going to get to the chit-chat and whatnot in just a little bit, and it'll be just John and I this week, kind of splitting our time this week between 50-50, like the first half of the conversation is kind of more like music-focused, being that John and I play in a band together and kind of talking about gear and just all sorts of random audio stuff and whatnot. And then the back half definitely leans more into video games. I even talk a little more about Tuin from Sokpop and just kind of go off the rails while we were kind of like planning what we were going to talk about for the proper episode and whatnot. So we'll get to that chit chat and whatnot in just a little bit. And in all reality, I haven't had a ton of time to do a bunch of other gaming outside of the stuff that we've been talking about on the podcast lately, because I've been spending a bunch of time now that I'm back in Michigan. I shouldn't say a bunch of time, but over the last week, like catching up with some old pals from back here, actually some old pals that I used to play in bands with. So we were even talking like, oh, we should get back together and jam and whatnot. So yeah, it was really good seeing a couple of those guys, hoping to keep that up and catch up with a few others as well. And then I went to my little cousin. I guess he's like my second cousin. I think that's how that works. But went to my little cousin's soccer game yesterday. He ended up scoring a hat trick. It was their last game of the season, but it was really fun going. We ended up, I went over to my cousin's house later, and we were playing some video games. My little cousin Drew wanted to bust out the NES for whatever reason. Usually we play on the Switch and whatnot. I've talked about playing games with him quite a few times, or at least a couple times on the podcast in the past, but yeah, we were playing the original, or he played a little bit of the original Turtles game on the NES, like the quote-unquote terrible one. I actually don't think it's that bad, but it's definitely a little rough around the edges. But then we jumped over for some two-player co-op action and started playing the Turtles 2 arcade game, and he was even saying, like, I think I want to be a game designer. So I was telling my cousin, like, oh, you should check out that Game Builder Garage on Nintendo Switch, or even the Mario Maker stuff. Like, I think my little cousin Drew would love that, because, yeah, he was talking, like, while we were playing Turtles, he was coming up with some crazy ideas, but he was like, yeah, I think I don't understand why they have hearts for health. Like, we should do it differently like this. And he was coming up with all sorts of, like, new weapons and stuff. It was pretty cool. Like, I don't know, like, I was telling my cousin, his father, Drew's father, my cousin Brandon, I was telling him that, like, man, when I was a kid just playing Mario, I was thinking, like, this is like a fun toy to play with. I wasn't really thinking, like, hey, you could be a game, you could make these for a career potentially. And just so cool that, like, you know, my little cousin Drew, who's like 6 or 7 years old, is like, oh man, I want to be a game designer, I think. I mean, I think he's got other interests, obviously. I just went to his soccer game, and he loves all kinds of sports. So I don't know if that's what he'll end up doing, you know, at the end of the day, but just so cool. He's like asking me if I can help him build a website and stuff. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But yeah, just really been having a blast catching up with old pals and family and whatnot while I've been back home. And then I did want to give a shout out to a couple video games, because I can't not do that in one of these intros. And I played a bunch of I shouldn't say a bunch. I played a couple hours of this game on a stream recently, which was probably a couple weeks ago at this point. But this game called Wilderplace, and I am just absolutely in love with this game. Number one, it's just absolutely gorgeous. The developer actually reached out to us and sent a copy our way. I can't remember if it came through via email or if it was on Steam Curator or whatever, but it just popped up. I would have otherwise been completely unaware of this game, and I was like, man, this looks really cool. It's kind of like an isometric dungeon crawler puzzler with all like hand-drawn art. Looks like almost like pen and paper art that's like scanned in, but like really kind of like, you know, kind of minimal animations. Everything's kind of like 1 or 2 or 3 frames of animation. And I just really love the aesthetic. And then on top of that, the gameplay mechanics and the music is also fantastic. It's just kind of like got a really nice, just mood setting ambiance going on. It's a really, really awesome game. A really awesome soundtrack and aesthetic and whatnot, but it's also a really awesome game. And I really love the way the game kind of like layers upon itself. So you start out, you play as this sort of like wizard, and you're moving again isometrically, but it's basically just a tile grid-based dungeon crawling, like room-based puzzle. You kind of like go into a room, and then you go into the, you know, you kind of solve the puzzle in there, and then you move on to the next room. And basically, at least for now, I'm about 2 hours into the game, and most of the puzzles are revolving around like, there'll be these like spirits that are kind of like possessing these animals, and you have to like go and depossess the animals, and then the spirit then possesses you. And then you, at least for now, for some of these spirits, I think all of them behave a little bit differently because there's a few different types, but like basically you can move up to 3 tiles, and if you move more than that, you like just turn into a tree, and it does the same thing to the animals. That's why you're trying to like decorrupt them. And then up to the point that I just got to, I actually just got a new ability, because like the dungeons all kind of layer. You kind of have to like backtrack a little bit, and kind of at first I was like, man, am I going to have to like make sure I leave these puzzles solved in a way? Like, is this going to be a brain breaking puzzle game where I have to think every step of the way, the whole way through the game. But it does seem like it breaks up into levels in a way where like you're solving kind of a few puzzles at a time, but you do end up looping back. And now I have the ability to then suck those spirits out of the trees and like repossess myself and plant them somewhere else. And then all the different enemy types and just kind of characters around. There's like these lumberjacks that are chopping down trees. And then they're like, oh, we didn't realize that the spirits are going to pop out of there. And then you have to find a new place to plant them. But then all the tiles surrounding the lumberjacks, it's almost like a turn-based game, sort of like all the NPCs and enemies or whatever you want to call them move. It's sort of like a non-violent game, at least up to now, but it's like, they're sort of like NPCs more than anything. And then they'll kind of do their, moves or take their turn, and then you take your turn and try to like, you gotta, plant that seed or plant that demon or whatever, that creature, like onto a seedling or a sproutling that's on the ground. So again, like the other NPCs will interact with the tiles in different ways as they move across the map and whatnot. And then again, you're kind of like looping back through the stages and like, depossessing trees so you can clear a path that you didn't leave open before. So it's just the way this game is layering together and just the presentation, just absolutely everything about it. I'm pretty much in love with it. I'm really excited to play some more. And I had a nice little kind of palate cleanser after that because it was starting to break my brain a little bit. I didn't mean to kind of de-sell how tricky the puzzles can get in this game because, I was getting one of the lumberjack sections where there was like 5 or 6 of them and they're just chopping down trees all over the place. Like I was really starting to get stumped, but it seems like you're going to get quite a few new abilities. It just really, really cool game. And then, for like a palate cleanser, I went over and played this game called Kraino Origins, which was just kind of like a 8-bit, like to call it like a Shovel Knight alike, is like a little bit of an oversell because it's not quite on that level, but it really kind of hit the spot. It was just like a perfect level of difficulty. Like it had that retro difficulty, but like after playing Turtles Arcade with my little cousin Drew last night, like we couldn't get past the 4th or 5th stage. And I mean, we were trying really, really hard. We played like, 4 or 5 different, like we got game overs like 4 or 5 times and then went back and started from scratch. Like I think 3 or 4 times and still couldn't get past like the 4th stage. And I think there's like 7 levels. So, and he's like not a slouch. I mean, I was carrying some of the weight, but he was definitely, not totally not carrying some of the weight as well. So, I mean, we were having a tough time. So it was really nice to kind of play just like a retro hop and bop hack and slash platformer in Kraino Origins that was just kind of like, it scratched that. Like I felt like every time I beat a level or beat a boss or beat a challenging section, like I felt good about it, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I got to try that again. I don't know. It just felt really nicely tuned on the difficulty front. It's got just some really nice 8-bit aesthetics, just a tad rough around the edges on like some of the music transitions, like just like at first glance, I thought like, oh, this looks a little jank. But then once I started playing it, I was like, oh, I'm really into this game. I got kind of more into it than I expected. And then I guess one more quick game as well. This game called Siege of Osaka, which is just a free game on Itch.io. I shouldn't say just a free game because it's amazing. It's kind of like a Pong meets Breakout. It's definitely a horizontally structured. So it's more like Pong in that sense where you're kind of like on the left side of the screen and you're hitting you play as like this little like samurai or ninja or whatever, and you're like running around. It's set in like a feudal Japan sort of setting, and you're like trying to like just take down these castles by hitting these ninjas that are trying to attack you, and then they turn into like a ball and just start rolling like bowling pins and smashing into the walls. And there's like 5 or 6 different stages. It's got that great NES, almost like a true NES aesthetic. I'm pretty sure it is in terms of like the color palette and whatnot. And I just really love Harley Wilson's another one like Cultisti, who I rave about all the time, who has probably, multiple dozens of games on their page. And just all of them are so unique, so clever, so cool. And Siege of Osaka is one of their more recent games. And I just was absolutely in love with this one. So I was more to give a shout out to Harley Wilson more than anything, because I think I've even talked about one of their other games, Out of Ammo, which was a lot of their games are kind of Breakout or Pong inspired. It was kind of like a Zero Ranger inspired Pong Breakout sort of game. But yeah, I've just been a huge fan of pretty much everything they've put out. I don't know if they don't seem to do a lot of game jam things. I think maybe a couple of them are, but they seem like they just kind of crank out games like on the side, because they also on their page, it seems like they work like in game development as their normal job as well, but then they just kind of pump out these free games on the side. And many of which I would love to see like a full-blown commercial release of, because there's just some really, really cool stuff. I'll make sure to put a link in the episode description here to where you can check out Harley's stuff, because I've been really impressed with everything that I've played and seen from them so far. But I think that's enough gushing and rambling from me at this point, but definitely cannot recommend Wilderplace enough and everything from Harley Wilson. But I'm a broken record at this point, and I'll wrap up the rambling, and we'll kick it over to John and I for some music and some video games chit chat. And until next week, we'll catch you then. I was streaming that game Monolith, and I was like, during like the boss battles in particular, I was just like, holy shit. And there were like a few people in the stream, and I kept saying like, hey, please let me know if this is too loud. Like, this is like fucking jamming in my headphones. I was like, I'm not gonna touch it because I'm rocking out, but I was like, this feels way louder than normal.
Yeah.
But I was like, but the levels look normal when I started up, so it should maybe be fine. And nobody said anything, but I was like, I guarantee it's going to be cranked because it's happened a few times where like nobody says anything. I'm like, why didn't anybody say anything?
Yeah.
But I watched back and it was like super quiet, so I must have just tweaked the headphone levels. I will say I barely nudged it down a little bit, and now it seems like almost too quiet. So I think it's just that I think we talked about this before. Even it might have even made it into a save it for the cast where it's like, you can't quite get it on the right volume level. Like one notch is too low, one notch is too high.
Yep. It always
Not
ends
that
up
this
being
has
that.
notches, but any luck with the PA system?
So I ended up just getting one. I just went with like a bundle from Sweetwater, like of like some entry level thing. And like, because it's a massive corporation, they like were like, all right, you'll get it tomorrow. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. All right,
Damn.
I guess. Like,
I mean, that's cool to get it immediately. I mean, yeah, I guess you can know like, okay, is it going to work? Is it good enough? Or whatever.
I mean, I got the mixer separately, so I ended up just going with like 2 PA speakers, and like it came with stands and cables and a microphone that I'm sure is garbage, but whatever.
Hey, I'm sure it's if it's just like one of those like kind of standard live mics or whatever, it's good enough for a practice situation for 100%. Sure. And that's actually awesome that it comes with stands. That's one thing I've never had. I've had a couple different, maybe even a few different PA systems over the years, and I've never had any stands to put them on.
Yeah.
And that's something I always like wished because I'd like be like, oh, we can bring our PA, and then I'd be like, but we don't have any stands, so if we're using it at a show, like you got to have like some tables or something to put it on.
What did we put it on when we played at? Did we just put him on the ground when we played at that pizza place?
Pizza place.
Remember for like when Mikey finished his
oh yeah.
Was it Golden Crust?
I think Golden Crust. Yeah, I think we did put them on the ground because they're like either side. Like if you lay them on their side, they have that like slant, like kind of monitor style. Yeah. So I think we like put them like on two different, like kind of almost like on a 90. It wasn't the best sound setup. Thankfully, we only got to play like 3 songs because they were like, stop.
We were also like right next to the Brown Line station. It was a patio, and like the L was right there. God.
Yeah. That was kind of crazy. Like the whole time while we were setting up, I was just like, I feel like we're not supposed to play here. I don't know why.
This
like whoever agreed to this that works here, like is gonna get in trouble after this show.
Yeah, like we set a precedent of like this is not allowed.
Yeah, like, no more shows at the Golden Crust.
Oh, God.
Maybe like parties and stuff. You can book like an event, but not an event where there's their own entertainment.
God, yeah.
Oh, that was fun though.
Yeah.
Do you have any interest in those speakers anyways? I know you're obviously not going to use them for the...
Probably not. I don't think so, just because it's like...
They're huge.
They're huge, and yeah, we don't have space for them in our like apartment, and I don't think I would like hook them up in the space.
Yeah, I'm not even like they might not even crackle to the best of my knowledge, but I'm pretty sure that's why I stopped using them and why I started using them as like end tables. Like I'm pretty sure I didn't just like upgrade for no reason because I feel like I would have. I feel like I would have tried to sell them, like because like Decibel used to do it. Maybe they still do it. I don't know, but they used to do it like where if you bought a used piece of gear from them, you could. I can't remember if there was a time limit on it, but it was however it was set up. You could like sell it back to them for I think it might have even just been straight up like what you paid for it. If it was like very, very much like, it might have been within a 6-month time period though. I can't, or maybe no, I think they had a 6-month return policy on used gear, and then you could sell it for, maybe it wasn't like, it had to be in-store credit. Obviously, they wouldn't just give you cash. But
right.
like if it was like, hey, if you're going to spend it back in the store, we'll give you back what you paid for it, as long as it's, again, in the roughly the same condition they sold it to you in.
Yeah.
Because I did that a few times where I was like, I bought a receiver at one point that matched this record player that my dad had given me, and then the record player kind of crapped out. And I was like, this receiver's fine, but the only reason I bought it is because it was like a Sony and it was from the same era, and it just looked cool together with the record player.
Right.
And yeah, once it crapped out, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I don't really need this monstrosity of a receiver anymore.
Yeah, I feel you.
So yeah, that's one thing that sucks about gear, man. It just takes up so much space.
Dude. And like, honestly, like, I hope that like we can find at least like another person to hop on the lease, but like part of me is honestly like I'm so dreading the idea of moving or looking for a new space, and I'm like, you know what, I might just fucking shell out. Like,
I feel like there's no way you're not going to eventually find some people, but I've been racking my brain like who else could,
because like everyone
I really
else
hope Altergod gets back to you.
Yeah, that would be nice, because I feel like they are like that, like that crowd is also like just very super, like, I think respectful, I think, is not the word I'm looking for.
No, but you read my mind exactly. I was like, they just like take care of the gear.
Yes.
Like, you're not gonna have to like worry about like, not so much like, I'm not necessarily talking about like, oh, you're worried about people stealing the gear per se, like anyone that we've had in our space or whatever. But like,
someone's not gonna blow out a speaker.
Yeah, or just be like, yeah, someone's going to actually like text and ask if they can use something, or somebody's going to, and not that that's been like a huge ongoing
right,
issue
exactly.
It was just like, hey, address it once and it's done.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just like, okay, I know these people and I know they have like decently nice equipment and they take good care of their stuff. They even
100%.
like repair equipment and stuff like that. Yeah, you just know like, okay, roughly same wavelength here. Mm-hmm. And they're just nice people too. I don't know many of them all too well, other than Mike, and I really don't even know him all that well. But
yeah,
nice dude.
I gotta say, like, but like Mikey and I haven't even practiced yet, and already I'm like, I'm such a fucking hack. Like, I've got
Dude,
like,
get out of town.
I've got 2 rhythms I play everything in, and then I'm like, that's all I'm like, at least like when it was like all of us writing music together, I'm like, all right, I don't need to be the focal point of everything, but like with like just Mikey me, I'm like, fuck, I'm the melody, and I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna be exposed so fast. Of like,
well, are you gonna do like loops and stuff like that?
No, like that's the man. I think I didn't want to like overload Mikey with like philosophy of like writing music or whatever, but like I was like, I don't want to be L1011, like I don't want to be Space Blood. I don't want to like have to like rely on like, okay, so like all the segments are like, this is looped and then we build on that, and then like that then it just gets like a constant crescendo, and I'm like,
that's a good point.
I don't want to do that. I want to like, I made a playlist that is nonsense. Like, none of it sounds like even remotely. There was like 2 bands on it that were just drum and bass, and then like other that was like, here's like 7 parts and it's like orchestrated. I was like, this is kind of useless as a reference, but
hey, but that's the way to do it though. Just get like on to at least like, hey, we like this stuff, we don't like this stuff. Like, at least like you can kind of be like, okay, this is the kind of vibe we're going for. Mm-hmm. But I like that. Yeah, I never had thought about it like that. But yeah, a lot of those bands that do the drum and bass thing do it's either like very dancey music, or which is still kind of loopy as well. It's maybe not loopy in the same way where it's like you said it perfectly, that constant crescendo.
Yeah. Or it's
perfect.
Like there like a couple bands. So man, I was looking up like a lot of like, oh, what's a band with just drum and bass? And a lot of it was just like shit like Primus. And I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like,
I'm glad you agree, because oh man, Primus just annoys. Like, I can appreciate the talent. They just annoy the hell out of me.
But yeah, the other half of it, I'm like, just fucking calm down. Like, play a whole note for once in your goddamn life.
It's too spastic. Yeah, I just like you'd have to be. It's like the type of thing where I'd like, if we played a show with them, a band of that skill level, like you'd just be like, holy shit, these guys are amazing. But then you'd like buy their album and then you'd put it on later and be like, why did I buy this? Like, yeah, these guys are cool live, but I'm never going to listen to this.
Yeah. So like half of the bands were just like all like math rock, like, oh yeah, everything's so complicated and intricate and whatever. And then I'm like, half of the songs that I ended up sending Mikey were just like the chillest, like nothing. Like it was like, I don't even know how to really describe it. As like, oh, this is actually like really boring drum stuff. And then like kind of just like a nice little like groove, and that's it.
Well, then Mikey can add his like drum flavor to it, so that's like perfect almost.
Yeah. There's did you ever listen? I know that Mikey was really into I forget the name of the album, but it's a La Dispute album, one of their newer ones. It's like Rooms in the House or something like that.
I think I've probably listened to that one. Is it the one that's like Mikey's favorite?
I don't know if it's his favorite, but like here, just like this like fucking
yeah
and like this is just like that was like the prime one of like I was just like
I love that song.
A nice chill like La Dispute song, which
I remember that was like one of the times, like I don't know if we were like, I think we were like Mikey had gotten either a new car or a new thing for his car, and like him and I were driving after like a practice, or I don't know, we were driving somewhere, and there might have been other people in the car too, but I remember that was on, and I remember just thinking like, okay, maybe I should give La Dispute more of a chance. Not that I ever like didn't like them, but I was just kind of always like, I dig it, but it's not my thing and necessarily.
And
I was like, wait a minute.
So much of their stuff is so intense that like
it's just
need
like
to be in a mood.
Yeah, it's like I don't always want to have that like blood curdling scream or that like, or that like talky scream kind of vocal thing.
Yep.
But they do have really cool. Yeah, that song has such a cool groove to it. It's kind of got a pinback feel a little bit, like the kind of like
there's a lot
wavy,
of bouncy. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm gonna be exposed so quick, where it's like, this is like, oh, this guy listens to a lot of pinback.
Yeah. I want to check out, of all play. Have you ever heard of the band or artist Ginger Root? I think all one word.
You've mentioned them before, but I haven't.
I don't think I have, because I just discovered them the other day.
Someone's mentioned them to me.
I just discovered them on TikTok of all places. Like I was posting something or just like checking to see if we had any notifications, and like I'll always like scroll through a few posts, and like they happen to have this post about like playing Chicago, and I think it might just be this one person in the band, and like, or is the artist or whatever.
Is it one word you said?
I think it's one word, yeah. And they're just like it's like almost like an ad for their show. It's actually pretty genius. Like they're just like, hey, I'm playing Chicago, September 23rd or something like that. And then they loop that, like he the way he says it is like kind of like in a singy songy kind of way, and then starts adding in some like, I guess it's in that loopy crescendo kind of way, but it's just like a quick 30-second riff, but then like adds in some keyboards, and then like quickly plays a riff on guitar, and then puts on some kind of octave pedal or whatever, and then plays a bass line on that same guitar, and then like with the guitar still on, like moves over to the drum kit and like starts like playing. I was like, I'm really vibing with this just whole aesthetic, because they like apparently like made this whole fake like 80s 90s like public access channel to promote their album. I don't know, it's got a really cool I don't know, just had a really good vibe to the music, and then there's a lot of like love and care put into the whole presentation of everything.
Nice.
So of all places to discover some cool music, TikTok.
Yeah. Hey, that's, oh my God. Well, I don't know if you saw like the bunch of like artists that were signed who like their labels like were forcing them to make like daily TikToks, because that's what like, and like it was miserable. It was a bunch of artists who looked like who were essentially like making posts that were just like, my label is requiring me to make a post today, so here it is. And that's like not putting on any makeup, not doing anything, like just like rolling out of bed, and like it was great, honestly. I mean, like it's a nightmare of an industry, but woof.
Yeah, it's like today's equivalent of like putting out a greatest hits to get out of your contract, to just be like, okay, we got one more album on the contract. How about a greatest hits with like 2 B-sides on it, and we're out of here.
God.
I love that. Love it. or hate it, actually.
I know. Like, yeah, that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask about, like, how dark do you want to get on this podcast? Because I know we try to like keep it positive. Like,
oh, we can get as dark as you want to get. I mean, as long as it's in like a just, hey, it is what it is. I mean, we got to just keep it realistic.
Yeah.
Especially for the podcast. Like for the videos, I'm always like, hey, those are recommendations always. But like for the podcast, we get into more like, discussion stuff or nitpicky stuff. Because I feel like even when we, like if we've all three played a game and we get into like the nitty gritty of a game, if we're like when we talked about Kirby, I feel like at the end, like when I was editing that, I was like, man, it feels like we just took a big dump on Kirby when like at the end of the day, I think we'd all be like, hey, I had fun playing that game.
Right.
And wouldn't like really have anything bad to say about it. But like
that's
if we're going to sit down and talk about it, we're going to be like, oh yeah, it is just kind of like, I'm never really going to probably play it again and so on and so forth. But like at the end of the day, I still enjoyed the game.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. What were you thinking dark in which particular? Because I'm like, are you thinking... Okay.
Like, just like...
I didn't know if you were thinking Point P and the Netflix stuff, potentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother fucking thing. But, like, just...
Go ahead.
Oh, like, just in our... like, I've avoided talking about Genshin, and I think I was, like, kind of, like... or, like, we've done it in passing where we're a little, like, tongue-in-cheek about, like, yep, this is a bad game for a bad company, but it's really good. And I think, like, being a little bit more head-on and saying, like... kind of addressing like why, even though like it is a game that I think is incredible, but there's reasons for that, and we'll save it for the cast.
Yeah, I'm all about that because I mean, I'd have no problem if like Nintendo did something like super shitty. Like I'm not one of those people who like hates every single thing they do. Yeah, like when they shut down some like person selling Mario merch or something, like, or doing a fan game, like whatever, it is what it is. But like it's more like when they shut down like a Smash tournament or like I think I've said this before, but like when they like do stuff like that where it's like you're literally like stopping fans from just like having fun. Like it's not like there's money involved, but like you're making enough money, just get out of here. You know, like it's kind of frustrating. But like when there's some stuff like when they like want to take their music down off like YouTube or whatever, it's like, hey, whatever, man, it's their music. If they don't want it on there, it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, and
it's not gonna kill them for that.
It's one thing for like the dude who was making what was it called, like another Metroid Prime 2 remake, or not Metroid Prime, another Metroid 2 remake. On the like as a
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but then like when that got is it DMCA'd or like whenever it got shut down by Nintendo,
like cease and desist or whatever it is.
But then like that dev got picked up for a little bit of like level design, I think consulting work on one of the Ori games, if not the first or the second one. And like that was a good move, I thought. And like same with when Sega hired Christian Whitehead.
And I think a couple other people or whatever. Like I feel like they've like brought either a few people in, or there were multiple people on that team that were like from the homebrew kind of Sonic community or whatever.
It's so like Nintendo has such like a stranglehold on like what they want to do with their IP and like what they want to do with their properties, that they like it had to be like, Microsoft and Sega were more lenient and were like, let's like hire them and have them work. Whereas like Nintendo is like, nope, only we have control over what our like product looks like.
Yeah, it's like they instead of like leaning into it and thinking like I feel like Sega was more like, hey, this Christian Whitehead has like a bunch of good ideas with all their Sonic games. Like instead of trying to outdo what he's doing, or instead of trying to like just rip off his ideas, like let's just see what he can do for us, or at least let's talk to him. And then it worked out. But like I feel like Nintendo panics either in a way of like, I don't know if it's like jealousy or just pride or whatever, of like we can't let someone else make a better Mario game, or we can't let
it's the same thing. It's very like someone's made the comparison, but it is so much the same way that like Disney handles their properties.
They're like, very Disney-y. Thank God they don't like lock their stuff up in the vault. I mean, they do. They do. Way, I mean, kinda, but like not in the same way that like Disney makes like a whole song and dance about it. Or I don't know if they still do, but they used to be like, it's coming out of the vault. Cinderella's coming out on DVD.
Well, they don't want to. I don't think they're ever releasing things to be purchased ever again. It's all going to be subscription based. Like they want you to keep. I feel like they're only doing.
I mean, that's the push for sure.
I feel like they're only doing releases when things come out, and then they're gone. Like I can't imagine. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass there. But.
I mean, you can definitely still buy like Blu-rays and stuff like that, but I mean, it's very much like you got to be a collector. If they're making them for the people who are collecting them.
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's almost to the equivalent level that like the games are, where it's like the physical. At least the indie games, like obviously like the AAA stuff, usually there's a physical version of most games, but for the indie stuff, it's like only the like kind of collectors. I don't want to say cream of the crop because it is just a mixed bag, but but it is kind of almost like a Criterion sort of situation, which that was like what finally listened to that episode, or a couple episodes of that insert credit show that Randall was telling me to listen to, and that was like one of the conversations they had was like, what would the like Criterion collection of video games be? And I was a little bit bummed because like the one guy kept like kind of steering the discussion like in a way of like how would Criterion themselves as a company like put out games, and I was like, no, I feel like I wish they were, because a couple other people kept kind of steering it in the way of like, more like, what if Limited Run had like a Criterion label, esque label that was like, oh, hey, these are like the
player's choice
class. Yeah, exactly. And I was a little bit bummed because I was like, it's both ideas are interesting, but I was kind of more interested in just hearing of like, what games would you consider putting on the list instead of like, what games do you think Criterion would put on the list?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though it's like kind of the same conversation, but
no, I feel you.
I kept like every time they were just feeding those little morsels of like, I think they're okay. Now they're going where I want them to go, and then it'd get pulled back in the other direction. I was like, nah, dang it. But still very entertaining. It's a good like just low key, because a lot of video gamey shows are very just like yelly and screamy and high energy.
I think it's so funny how like I don't really watch. I mean, I have my one channel that I watch, which is Run Button, and then I don't really watch any other streams. I don't like follow any other like video game things, and like even they're like, it's like, we don't watch Let's Plays, and like we make them. It's like, no, this is just a thing that we've done for over a decade, and like.
It's just force a habit, or not even habit, but it's just the way you play games almost. Because I kind of get that feeling a little bit. Like I was playing some Curse Crackers earlier, and I pretty much just played like the levels that it just came out, and I played just like the levels that were in the demo that I had already played, and I was just like, I felt weird not streaming it almost. Like I was like, this game's cool. I might as well, not that we have like a huge audience, but I'm just like, might as well show this game to people. But I'm like, I made a video for the demo. I did an interview stream with the developers. It's like, I don't need to stream every fucking second of my gaming life, which is why I've been enjoying Tuin a lot. I'm going to actually I'll just talk about it right now and put it on a save it for the cast, because we got enough to talk about this week anyways. Because one of the reasons that I haven't streamed Tuin yet, which is the newest Sokpop game, and I talked about it on a recent save it for the cast as well. The one that just came out. But it doesn't have any music in the game, and it's like an idle game kind of. So you're like letting things just kind of slowly happen. And like, there's pretty decent, like now that there's enough going on in the game, there's actually quite a few sound effects, but like I couldn't have spoken too soon, because like now I have like some electricity stuff going on. And one of the things you can buy is a radio, and you hook up the radio. And funnily enough, I think I don't know if I was telling you, but I was telling somebody where I was like, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to put on some Sokpop soundtracks in the background and maybe stream the game while I'm like playing it, and just put on like a game that has like a similar vibe. Yeah. And like, funny enough, the radio is like kind of like a Sokpop jukebox. It like cycles through like 6 or 7 of their songs in like a real muffled, like tinny
that rules
vibe. God, it's so cool. Good. And you have to actually like power the radio by like, I have solar panels set up with like all these like electrical wires. Like, really my only gripe of the game is like it's all mouse controlled, and like the cursor is like this giant fucking like mitten of a hand, which is awesome. It's like adorable. But it's like, it's really hard to like, you're trying to like pluck up like the carrots or the corn or whatever, and like you're accidentally grabbing the hose and moving it. I mean, it's awesome that you can grab stuff and move it after you've placed it. You don't have to like, oh shit, I put that in the wrong spot and now I gotta, destroy it and make a new one or buy a new one or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, oh man, I think there is something that you can place where you can like lock buildings in place, and I don't know exactly what all that entails. I haven't turned that on yet, but I think it's more where you're only grabbing the vegetables and the whatever. But you would love that game. I got to set up.
I've seen a few clips of it that you posted, and like, like especially when you were like dragging stuff, I think like grown crops into like a little thing, and I was like, oh, that looks like that would be frustrating. Like if it like accidentally goes behind the thing that you're dropping it into.
Yeah, and especially because like the way that your hand is like kind of like when you're not able to grab something, it's kind of like a thumb and an index fingers sticking out, and then like the other fingers are kind of like curled up or whatever.
Yeah.
But then as soon as like if you're able to like grab the corn, it kind of turns into like the full like open hand, like letting you know you can grab something. But it's like it's just the way it's like lined up. Maybe there's just something weird with my monitor, because sometimes there is like a weird like misalignment with a cursor or something with like an HDMI or whatever. But yeah, it's sometimes I'm like, man, you almost have to go like, you get used to it eventually, but you're like, yeah, you almost have to go like under the crop a little bit. But yeah, it's just so satisfying. Like I just planted like a palm tree, which oddly enough grows bananas. I mean, maybe, I don't know what kind of, I'm guessing it'll grow maybe different things. Maybe coconuts is what I was expecting to grow, but,
right.
But I got a pear tree, apple tree. I got to figure out, I haven't delved too deeply in other than the radio into the electric stuff. I mean, I have solar panels set up and like a bunch of juice flowing. I even have like a nuclear plant set up.
But you don't have anything that it's going to. It's just
it's all powering a radio. But you can like, there's like conveyor belts and like these like grabber hands and like, so I got to just figure out how to set it up. Like I feel like, because I think I said this on the Save It for the Cast, but I was like, it's an idle game, but it's like the furthest thing from an idle game, because you're like constant. There's no pressure to do anything on like a super time limit, other than like after you pluck a vegetable out of the ground, it can like rot over a certain amount of time. You got a decent amount of time, but I think if you leave it planted and you don't pluck it, it stays maybe not forever, but for a long time. And it's just so cute. Like when they're ready to be plucked, like they're just like a regular, like whatever looking vegetable or whatever, and then as soon as it's ready to be plucked, it grows like, or doesn't grow, but like eyes and mouth appear, and they're just like they're just so cute.
Yeah,
such an adorable game. All the Sokpop games are so cute.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see like it's essentially kind of like a sequel to Gardener, in a way, not necessarily, but it's like a lot of the same like art assets, or at least slightly tweaked, but it's a very similar aesthetic. And yeah, even one of the tracks that's how I realized, I was like, this track sounds super familiar. I was like, that's the tune from Gardener.
Nice.
Yeah, man, I'm loving those Sokpop games. I think I've said that. I'm going to be a broken record. I'm going to Save It for the Cast. Are like going to just become, the intros are just going to become Sokpop and Punk Cake gush fests half the time. When I bought the bundle, I was like, hey, are you guys, because the newest game, Tile Tale at the time, wasn't in the bundle, and I was like, hey, is the Tile Tale going to be added to the bundle when Tuin comes out? Because Tuin was delayed at the time, and they're like, oh shit, we totally forgot to put it in the bundle.
Nice.
We're putting it in right now. I was like, okay, well then I'm buying it right now. But I thought that was funny because as soon as Tuin, I thought maybe they did it where like, okay, as soon as like the newest game is not in the bundle until the next game comes out.
Right.
I was figuring was maybe their situation, but they were just like, nope, we totally forgot, because Tuin's in there from the jump.
That rules.
Yeah, they seem just awesome. Like the Tuin's had like I said this on the Save It for the Cast too, but there's like been a bunch of bug fixes. I think that they're on like version 1.5 already, but like on 1.3, on 1.4, they're like, oh shit, I broke a bunch of stuff, so I'm putting it back to 1.3 because I'm going on vacation. And then they're like, okay, I'm back, 1.5's here. I don't know. They just good vibes all around. It feels good to be like, okay, happy to toss them our support. It felt kind of good to be like, okay, we hit a Patreon milestone. We'll sign up for another Patreon and spread the wealth a little bit.
Absolutely.